The morning sun, usually a welcome guest in the Davenport mansion's breakfast room, cast long, menacing shadows this morning. It glinted off the polished silver and flawless crystal, creating a scene of almost painful perfection. At the head of the mahogany table sat Richard Davenport, a man whose face seemed permanently etched with the worries of his financial empire. Across from him, his second wife, Amelia, wore a perfect, doll-like smile that never quite reached her eyes. Between them sat the heart of the house, 10-year-old Lily Davenport. She reached for her personal glass of freshly squeezed orange juice, her favorite treat, made just for her every single morning. She was a delicate child, with a quiet melancholy that had clung to her since her mother's passing 3 years ago. Lifting the heavy crystal glass with both hands, she brought it to her lips and took a small sip. For a second, nothing happened. Then, the color drained from Lily's face. Her eyes, wide and startled, rolled back in her head. The glass slipped from her grasp, hitting the thick Persian rug with a dull thud, its vibrant orange contents spreading like a sinister stain. Lily slumped sideways in her chair, her small body going limp before she slid silently to the floor. Chaos erupted. Richard shot up from his chair, his face a mask of terror. Lily! Oh my God, Lily! Amelia shrieked, a high, theatrical sound that shattered the morning calm. My baby! Somebody do something. Call a doctor. But from the doorway, a figure moved with an unnerving calm. Mrs. Eleanor Vance, the family's nanny of 6 months, strode into the room. Her sharp, intelligent eyes took in the scene in a single glance, the panicked father, the hysterical stepmother, and the small, still child on the floor. Section 1, The Illusion of Perfection. To any outsider, the Davenport estate was a fortress of success. Manicured lawns rolled into sculpted gardens, and the mansion itself seemed to radiate an aura of impenetrable prestige. But inside those walls, the air was different. It was thin, cold, and heavy with unspoken tension. Mrs. Eleanor Vance had felt it from her first day. She was a woman in her late 50s, with a quiet strength and deep kindness in her eyes. A widow who'd raised 3 children of her own, she'd taken the position as Lily's nanny, seeking not just a job, but a purpose. She found it in the small, lonely girl who roamed the vast, empty halls like a little ghost. Richard Davenport, for all his power in the boardroom, was a ghost in his own home. Eleanor could see that he loved his daughter, but his love was filtered through a thick fog of grief and work. He gave her everything she could ever want but was emotionally absent, a distant star in her small universe. And then there was Amelia. Richard's new wife was 20 years younger, a woman of breathtaking beauty and calculated charm. She played the part of the new mother to perfection. Her public displays of affection for Lily were flawless. She bought her extravagant gifts and gushed about her precious stepdaughter to their social circle. But Eleanor saw what others missed. She saw the flash of irritation in Amelia's eyes when Lily was just being a child. She saw the way Amelia's grip on Lily's shoulder was a little too tight, her smile a little too strained when she thought no one was watching. She noticed how Amelia's conversations with Richard often drifted toward his will and his assets, all under the guise of prudent planning. Eleanor's domain was the nursery, but her observant nature made her a silent witness. She saw how the rest of the staff spoke of Amelia in hushed, careful tones. They were polite, but there was a fear in their deference, a wariness that hadn't been there for Richard's first wife. The only real warmth in the house came from the bond between Eleanor and Lily. Eleanor didn't try to replace Lily's mother, she just created a safe space for the little girl. They'd spend hours in the garden naming flowers or bake cookies in the vast kitchen, filling the cold space with the smell of cinnamon and sugar. At night, Eleanor would read to Lily from her own worn copy of The Secret Garden, a story of a lonely child who finds healing in a hidden, magical place. Ellie, Lily had whispered one night, clutching Eleanor's hand, "Do you think my mother has a secret garden in heaven?" "I'm sure she does, sweet girl," Eleanor had replied, her heart aching. "And she's tending it, just waiting for the day she can show it to you." It was in these quiet moments that Lily confided in her. She spoke of her unease around Amelia. She smiles at me, Ellie, but her eyes don't. They look hungry. And then, about a month ago, came the juice. Amelia had suddenly become obsessed with Lily's health, claiming she'd read about a special blend of citrus that was essential for a growing girl. From that day on, Amelia insisted on preparing a pitcher of this special juice for Lily herself every morning. She'd bring it to the kitchen, already mixed in a sealed crystal pitcher, telling the staff it was for Lily and Lily alone. Eleanor found it odd. Amelia never bothered with domestic tasks. But she was insistent, framing it as a gesture of motherly love. "It's our little secret recipe, isn't it, darling?" she'd coo to Lily. Eleanor noticed something else. On the days Lily drank the juice, she seemed more tired, more subdued. She'd often complain of feeling sleepy and fuzzy. When Eleanor had gently suggested to Richard that maybe the juice didn't agree with Lily, Amelia had flown into a rage. "How dare you question my care for this child," she'd snapped. "I am her mother. You are just the help. Remember your place." The words stung, but they also solidified a cold knot of dread in Eleanor's stomach. She started watching more closely. She saw Amelia handling a small, dark glass vial with a dropper, tucking it away when she thought no one was looking. She noticed the faint, almost imperceptible bitterness that clung to the air around the juice, a medicinal scent that had no place in a child's drink. Her instincts were screaming that something was terribly wrong. Section 2, The Juice is Poisoned. Back in the breakfast room, as Richard knelt beside his unconscious daughter and Amelia continued her panicked performance, it all clicked into place for Eleanor. The sleepy spells, the strange smell, the vial, it formed a single, horrifying truth. "Call a doctor." Richard yelled again, his voice cracking. Amelia rushed to Lily's side. "Oh, Lily, my sweet girl, can you hear me? Let's get you some water." She reached for a glass from the table. That movement broke Eleanor's trance. Her voice, when it came, wasn't a shout, but a command that cut through the hysteria like a blade. "Stop." Richard and Amelia froze. Eleanor stepped forward, placing herself between Amelia and the child. "Don't give her anything," Eleanor said, her voice low and filled with an authority they'd never heard before. She pointed a trembling finger at the orange puddle on the rug. "The juice is poisoned." The silence that followed was heavier than the chaos it replaced. The words just hung in the air. Richard's face twisted from fear to disbelief. "Poisoned? What in God's name are you talking about, Eleanor? Have you lost your mind?" Amelia, however, went on the attack. Her tears vanished, replaced by pure venom. "How dare you," she shrieked. "How dare you say something so monstrous? Richard, do you hear her? She's insane. She's just trying to cause trouble." "I am not," Eleanor said, her gaze locked on Amelia, refusing to be intimidated. "I know what I saw. And I know what I smell." "What you smell?" Richard scoffed. "Eleanor, my daughter is unconscious. This is not the time for fantasies." "It's not a fantasy, Mr. Davenport," Eleanor insisted, pleading with him to listen. "For weeks, Mrs. Davenport has made this juice. For weeks, Lily has been tired and unwell after drinking it. This morning, I saw her through the crack in the kitchen door. She took a small bottle from her purse. A dark glass vial. She added several drops to the pitcher before bringing it in here." Amelia gasped. "You're a liar. A filthy, contemptible liar. Richard, she's making this up. Why would I ever harm my own daughter?" "She is not your daughter," Eleanor said quietly. The words landed like a slap. Amelia's face twisted. "You're fired. Do you hear me? Fired. Get out of my house." She grabbed Eleanor's arm, her nails digging in. Let her go, Amelia, Richard said, his voice a low growl. He looked at Eleanor, a storm of confusion in his eyes. He wanted to dismiss it, but Eleanor's conviction was unnerving. She was terrifyingly calm. The detail about the vial, it was chillingly specific. Mr. Davenport, Eleanor said, ignoring Amelia's grip, the juice. Please, just smell it. The spill on the rug. It doesn't smell like oranges. There's something else. Something, chemical. Torn, Richard hesitated. But the image of his daughter lying pale and still overrode everything. He slowly knelt, his tailored suit jacket brushing the floor. He leaned over the stain and inhaled. His head snapped back. He sniffed again. He looked up, his face pale. She's right, he whispered, his voice hoarse with dawning horror. It smells bitter. Almost like almonds. It's not right. Amelia's face went white. Her hand fell from Eleanor's arm. Richard, you can't believe this servant over me. It's probably just an old orange, or... Just then, the front doors opened and Dr. Matthews, the family physician, bustled in. Richard. I came as soon as you called. What happened? The doctor's arrival broke the spell. As Dr. Matthews knelt beside Lily, checking her vitals, the tension shifted to the medical crisis. Her pulse is thready and her breathing is shallow, the doctor said gravely. What did she eat or drink this morning? Just, her orange juice, Richard stammered, his eyes darting between his daughter, his wife, and Eleanor. Eleanor stepped forward. Doctor, she said, her voice clear and steady. I believe the juice was poisoned. I witnessed Mrs. Davenport adding a substance to it from a vial this morning. Dr. Matthews looked up, startled. Poisoned? With what? I don't know, Eleanor admitted. But it has made her drowsy for weeks, and today, she collapsed. Amelia found her voice again, a desperate edge to it now. Doctor, this woman is clearly unstable. She's the one who is with Lily all day, if anyone did something. Enough, Amelia. Richard roared. The uncertainty was gone, replaced by a cold resolve. He looked at Dr. Matthews. Can you test it? The juice? I can take a sample, the doctor said, pulling a sterile container from his bag. But we need to get Lily to the hospital. Immediately. These symptoms are consistent with some kind of sedative or neurotoxin. She needs emergency care. As the doctor collected a sample, Richard made a decision. He looked not at his wife, but at the nanny. Eleanor. Don't go anywhere. He then turned to his head of security, who had appeared at the door. Henderson. Get the surveillance footage from the kitchen for the last hour. Bring it to my study. Now. The confrontation was over. The investigation had begun. Section 3, The Unmasking. The ride to the hospital was a blur of sirens and suffocating silence. Richard sat in the ambulance holding Lily's small, cold hand, his world collapsing. Amelia had been left behind, under the watchful eye of the security staff. Eleanor had insisted on coming, and Richard had simply nodded, too numb to argue. She sat opposite him, a silent, solid anchor in his storm of fear and betrayal. At the hospital, doctors swept Lily away into the ER. Richard and Eleanor were left in a sterile white waiting room. He couldn't bring himself to look at her. If she was right, his life was a lie. He had invited a monster into his home. If she was wrong, he had just accused his wife of attempted murder. There was no good outcome. Meanwhile, back at the mansion, Amelia paced the study like a caged animal. Henderson, the head of security, worked silently at Richard's desk, pulling up the camera feeds. This is ridiculous, Amelia spat. A complete violation of my privacy. You'll be fired for this, Henderson. Henderson didn't look up. I'm following Mr. Davenport's direct orders, ma'am. He clicked the mouse. The kitchen feed flickered to life. Amelia entered the frame, holding the crystal pitcher. She moved to a corner, partially obscured by a refrigerator, thinking she was in a blind spot. See? Amelia said, forcing a triumphant tone. Nothing. But Henderson was a pro. He clicked again, switching to a secondary camera, one mounted high in the corner. The image was clear as day. On the screen, the filmed Amelia glanced furtively toward the door. Seeing no one, her sweet mask dissolved, replaced by a look of cold determination. She pulled the small, dark vial from her pocket. With practiced speed, she unscrewed the dropper, squeezed a generous amount into the juice, and swirled the pitcher once. She tucked the vial away, her doting stepmother expression slipping perfectly back into place. Amelia just stared at the screen, her mouth hanging open. The color drained from her face. It was irrefutable. It was damning. It was over. That's been doctored, she stammered. It's a fake. Eleanor, she framed me. Henderson slowly turned to face her, his expression pure contempt. Ma'am, he said, his voice flat. I know a tampered video when I see one. This is raw footage. This is you. At that moment, the door opened and Richard walked in. His face was ashen. He had just gotten off the phone with the hospital. They've stabilized her, he said, his voice hollow. The lab results came back. A massive dose of a powerful sedative. The doctor said, he said the dosage was high enough to cause cardiac arrest in a child her size. If she had drunk the whole glass, she would be dead. He looked from Henderson's grim face to the image frozen on the screen, Amelia, vial in hand, her face a portrait of malice. He looked at his wife, the woman he had trusted. The beautiful facade had shattered, and for the first time, he saw the pure, unadulterated evil underneath. Amelia saw the look in his eyes and knew it was over. The performance collapsed. Her face contorted not with remorse, but with cornered rage. Fine, she screamed. Yes. I did it. Are you happy? I did it. Do you have any idea what it's like living in this house? In the shadow of a dead woman? Everything is Lily, Lily, Lily. You're precious, perfect Lily. The sole heir to everything. I was tired of waiting, Richard. Tired of being second best. With her gone, it would have all been mine. Ours. Richard just stared, his expression one of utter revulsion. He felt a vast, cold emptiness. He turned to Henderson. Call the police. Conclusion. 2 weeks later, the Davenport mansion was a different place. The oppressive silence had been replaced by a quiet peace. Amelia was gone, her name now tabloid fodder. Within the walls of the home, the healing was slow and profound. Something in Richard had changed. The crisis had shattered his emotional detachment, forcing him to be a father again. He cancelled meetings and delegated responsibilities. He spent his days with Lily, reading to her, listening to her, helping her feel safe again. Lily was recovering. The physical toxins were gone, but the emotional scars remained. Her trust was fragile. The one person she clung to, the one person whose presence brought the light back into her eyes, was Eleanor. Eleanor had stayed. She was no longer just the nanny, she was the quiet, beating heart of the family. One evening, Richard found her sitting on a garden bench, watching Lily chase fireflies. He sat down beside her. I haven't properly thanked you, Eleanor, he said, his voice thick with emotion. You saved her life. There are no words, no amount of money, that could ever repay that. He held out an envelope. A check. A reward. A severance. Eleanor looked at the envelope, then at Richard. She gently pushed his hand away. "I don't want your money, Mr. Davenport," she said softly. Watching that little girl laugh again, "That's all the reward I will ever need." "No," Richard said, shaking his head as a tear traced a path down his cheek. "Not anyone would have done that. You saw what I refused to see. You listened when I wouldn't. You were a mother to her when I barely knew how to be a father." He tore the envelope in half, the pieces fluttering to the grass. "I don't want to offer you a reward, Eleanor. I want to offer you a place. Not as an employee, but as family. We need you." Eleanor looked over at Lily, who had caught a firefly and was running towards them, her face lit by its gentle, pulsing light and her own radiant smile. "Look, Ellie. It's magic." Eleanor smiled, a real, deep smile that reached her eyes. In that moment, the great, cold mansion finally felt like a home. The illusion of perfection had been destroyed, but in its place, something far more valuable had begun to grow, something real, saved by the quiet courage of a woman who was so much more than just the nanny. CTA. The bond between a child and someone who truly cares can be the most powerful force on earth. If this story touched your heart, subscribe for more emotional stories that remind us of the hero inside us all. Let us know in the comments what you thought about Eleanor's bravery.